Of the people who are still alive but have drifted out of your life, who do you wonder about the most and why? Kid I knew when I was 15. We weren't close friends, but he called me up in the middle of the night once to tell me he was going to kill himself. He hung up on me and wouldn't answer his phone after that. I woke up my mom and convinced her to drive me to his house at like 3 a.m. He came out and was fine. He was just completely shocked I actually came to check on him. He was really thankful that I cared at all. His home life was pretty crummy and he moved away to stay with his grandma soon after that. After he moved out of state, we lost touch. That was 20+ years ago and I still wonder if his life got better. I hope he did. Props to your mom for driving you over to that guy's house in the middle of the night. I hope you gave her a hug. For sure, but honestly more props to /user Memafiend for, as a teenager, taking action and waking up mom to ask for a ride at 3 a.m. Not that it wasn't awesome of mom to give the ride, but in my experience, it's pretty damn hard to make the decision to inconvenience someone else like that for what may end up being no big deal. Friend's dad died because I didn't do that. Reddit link. I'm glad you went over and glad that he didn't go through with what he said he'd do. My buddy from 1993 to 2003. He was a part of my daily/weekly life for an entire decade. I was the best man at his wedding. He married a lovely woman and she and I were even friends. They moved away to a new town and started a family. We last went to a ball game together in 2011. I never heard from him again after that. In that 10 years I was sure we would be friends for life. I did not expect that we would drift apart, but it happened. This has happened to me twice. Once was with a guy in my wedding. Good friends, but he moved far away. He came back for the wedding but never really saw him since. It was kind of a lesson in life that people don't just kind of stick in your life, they are either there or not. Another friend, best friend from high school, was in his wedding around 10 years after high school. Driving back I realized I was probably never going to talk to him again and haven't. I just knew. I'm very grateful for our friendship and some things are just meant for a certain time. Thing is, you'll hear from him again and the years will quickly dissolve like they never happened. Wow, thanks for the silver and hugs, kind strangers. It's amazing how stuff like that happens, isn't it? My best friend from college ended up moving back to his hometown of Guam where he lived with his parents, basically living comfortably without really any responsibility and having a pretty chill job. I was back in Southern California and was just busy doing my own thing. We kept in contact here and there, though. We decided to take a trip to Vietnam and Cambodia. The plan was to meet up in Vietnam, explore, and then travel up the Mekong Delta into Cambodia together. He got a hostel in Ho Chi Minh City and was there a day before I was. I ended up making it to the hostel and conked out from jet lag while the hostel owner had given word to me that he was out. My buddy woke me up and after a brief hug, we were down to planning our trip as if we'd seen each other before that for years. I hadn't seen him in 7 of them. I haven't seen him since I've had my son over 10 months ago, and even though I live on the other side of the country now and have my own family and he's back in Southern California, and I in NYC, I know that I'm going to know him for the rest of my entire life because of the energy and the experiences we've shared. It's unfortunate that some may go without ever experiencing bonds like these. They take effort because life gets busy. When I was 7 years old, I had a best friend named Shannon. One day she didn't come to school, and nobody answered at her house when my mom called. A month later, I got a phone call from her and she said they had to go away and she missed me. Then the call cut out like someone took the phone and hung up on her. I never heard from her again. I assume she and her family went into witness protection or something similar. I hope they made it through and she grew up okay. This gave me chills. My name is Shannon and one day I moved abruptly due to child support issues. I was living with my bio father who was a horrible parent to my sister and I sadly he won custody over my mom who was stable and worked several jobs to provide us. I never got to say goodbye to my friends and get my stuff at my old school, crying face. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm also really hoping you're the mystery Shannon. Quick. What was the name of the school? Is this a reunion in the making? Occam Center School. I would be very surprised if it is. When I was a child and living with my parents, we rented our basement to a man named Hoon. He was super nice to us and even tutored my brother and I in school. The coolest thing was that he was super into astronomy, and every so often, he set up his telescope in our backyard to look at stars and the moon and invited us to look as well. He became like family to us, and when my parents decided to tear down our house and build a new place, Hoon came along with us to live in a temporary space until the house was built, and then moved back to our new house as our tenant again. During this period, Hoon also drove my brother and I to school, as we were not living within walking distance from our temporary space. After 1 to 2 years, one day my parents said that Hoon moved back to Malaysia and we never saw him again. My then friend, who was another one of our tenants, told me that Hoon died and my parents were lying to me. I asked my parents about this, but they said that isn't true. I think my then friend was just messing with me. I always wondered why he suddenly moved and haven't been able to find any online presence of him. Why don't you ask your parents again now that you're older? A good friend of mine that I've known since 4th grade. His mother died from Huntingtons and he tested positive for the gene for it, which means, as far as I am aware, he is guaranteed to get it. I know he's done well for himself over the years, but he still creeps into my mind from time to time, wondering how he is. My brother-in-law's mom has this, and it is a terrible disease. She is currently in her 40s and in a nursing home. Huntington's is notorious for incomplete penetrate. You can have the gene but for whatever reason not show any symptoms. Even more so if genes come from maternal lineage. So there is a likelihood that your friend is okay and not suffering. Or could be suffering. Tends to manifest earlier and earlier with each subsequent generation, especially if genes were received from dad. It's definitely a bit of a Schrödinger's Huntington's dilemma. My understanding is that incomplete penetration only happens in the range of 36 to 39 allele repeats. Once you hit 40 repeats, expression is guaranteed, though as you said it gets worse with each generation because the number of repeats increases with each generation. His nickname was Question. Kid from high school used to come sit with us at lunch. Great guy, super nice. Every single thing he said was a question. He would ask you about your entire day. Where you got your new shoes. Ask about your haircut. I would ask him the same questions and he wouldn't answer me, kind of stare off and almost ignore the question completely. Then he would ask you another question. Sounds like some kind of autism to me. Yeah, he probably heard that it's important to ask questions in a good conversation and ran with it. Oh God, that's me. OMG, I knew a kid like this. His name was Mark, and did the exact same thing, so we always called him Question Mark. He was one of my best friends as a kid. Wonder what he's been up to. That's probably better than my friend Mark, who we call Skid Mark. RuneScape user LoneWolf1039. You made my childhood amazing, bro. Countless hours playing one of my childhood favorites with an online friend. We called each other brother. If you're still out there, MK Groudon misses you, man. There's probably a ton of us in this thread remembering our old friends who logged out forever. Here's to you, archaeologist aka Stanley, old friend from 3rd grade who moved to Pennsylvania and not too long after that, stopped logging into RuneScape. He was my closest friend at that time. My best friend and I were really close to this girl on RuneScape for like a year. We'd even MSN live chat, go king in the wildy together, skill together, etc. We were 11 and she was 14 at the time. One day she never logged in again. Years later, we found her on Facebook. Turns out, she died from diabetes AMAB 24. Rest in paradise. Oh no, really wasn't expecting death of an online friend. Hope she now rest in paradise. I found one on Instagram, and a couple other sites. You could find him. Ah man, I had one too, RadBrad777, if you're out there man, Vader207 is here. Reminds me of a girl I met playing some bakery game on the iPod Touch. We talked back and forth every so often and gave each other gifts. Then one night, she told me that something terrible happened in her hometown, a huge earthquake, and tsunami. That was the 2011 Fukushima disaster and she never came back online after that. Hope she's doing alright. I knew someone who lived in Japan when I was playing Final Fantasy XI. We could barely converse due to the language barrier, but we did a lot of stuff in the game together. They never logged on again after the earthquake. I always wondered if they were okay. Imagine as Lone Wolf 1039 sees this. That would be dream come true. It would. Dude made my childhood awesome, was really there for me while I was still a cringe-tacular tween, put up with a lot of my crap lol. If you haven't yet, you could try our /LongLowsGamers Reddit link. Was he from the southern states of the USA? Or Dayton, Ohio, and/or was he American Asian? I have access to a strong OSINT tool, and this is the people it found related to username LoneWolf1039. Got a name as well but don't want to put it here. DM if results may be accurate. Everybody gangsta till the strong OSINT tool gets mentioned. Maybe the folks over at our /RB can help you locate LoneWolf1039, Reddit link. When I went backpacking around SE Asia, I went with no particular plans. I ran into a Polish paratrooper my second day there who used me to get a couple of girls to go out for drinks with him, since I said hey to him earlier in the day. He wasn't going anywhere in particular either, so we spent the next 2 months on the road going to 5 different countries. The guy was literally my brother for those 2 months. We parted ways when I had to go to a country he couldn't get a visa for, and it was where I was to catch my flight home. We still talked daily for a few weeks, and we were talking about starting a business. Then he falls off the face of the earth. I'm positive his dad was someone, so he didn't talk much about certain aspects of his life. He didn't have any social media, and he didn't renew the domain he hosted his email on, so no way of contacting him. Even friends who we met along the way frequently ask if I've heard from him since they wanted to connect with him again. I keep hoping one of these days we'll run into each other at a cafe or something by the waterfront having a beer like we did traveling. Dude, your story sounds like so much fun. I remember going on vacations with nothing in particular planned. I miss those days. Wow, this one hit me. Do you have any photos? Never know. I have 3 pictures of him and 2 videos. Only one when he was looking at the camera, and that was me, him and one of those girls that first night. One he turned his head away from the camera when I had my phone facing him. And the last was when we made a long hike from the airport in Kuching and he didn't notice me take the pic from behind. The videos were when we were trying to go back to our hostel, but there was a movie being filmed, so we hung out behind everyone and filmed. He was too busy trying to record as well to notice I had him on camera. Lots of video where he was sitting beside me off camera. He really hated being filmed/photoed. Friend of mine in high school. We wound up working for the same place. He started dating one of the women working there, and fell hard for her. We were 18-19, she was 24, when I say hard, I mean hard. Every conversation would somehow get steered back to her. After about 3 months, he says we're getting married. My mouth engaged before my brain and I said, "You're making a mistake." He was a little shocked. I backtracked and said that you haven't known each other very long, maybe you should wait a bit longer, etc., etc. They didn't, and did the courthouse wedding thing, and he dropped off the earth into wedded bliss for a couple months. After those couple months, when the marriage had crashed, burned down, fell over, and sunk into the swamp, we were doing that guy bonding get the guy who got dumped drunk thing. He told me that I was the only person that told him not to do it, and he should have listened. He started down some weird depressive spiral. Looking back on it, I think he may have had other issues. He'd call me late at night and ramble about weird crap. The last time I talked to him, he called me at 3 a.m. rambling. He'd say something, and punctuate it with stuff like, "You know? You get it? Do you see?" I hung up on him, because I wanted to sleep. Never heard from him again. This was the late 70s. I feel bad now, but back then, I was a callow youth and had no idea what the hell was going on, or what to do about it. Every now and then, I search for him on social media. No hits. Those personal data websites say that he's alive, but no other info. Not sure what I'd do if I ever got contact info for him. Edit. Thanks for the offers to help find him, but it's not necessary. I just wonder about him every now and then. This hit so much harder when I read late 70s. That's a seriously long time to wonder. Makes you realize just how long we'll wonder about the people like this that we know right now. That's actually really depressing for me. Good on you, mate, for looking out for him. But don't beat yourself up if something did happen to him. He needed help that you couldn't have given to him. Hindsight is 20/20, but at that time, you could have been dealing with your own crap that you couldn't give him more of your time. And that's fine. It's obvious you've done much more than the people close to him have, yet you're practically strangers at that point. My father's best friend had a similar situation, where they just graduated high school and his friend was going to marry his new girlfriend. My father told his best friend it was a huge mistake, and not to do it. Well, they got married. And guess what? About 50 years later, they're still happily married. And my dad still holds an angry grudge against his childhood best friend for disrespecting him by not following his advice. My dad is a butthole. In general, I do think it's dumb to get married so young, and or to someone you barely know, but there's still that 10% chance or whatever that it works out. My best friend from elementary school. He was so genuine and full of joy. I hope growing up didn't take that part away from him. Original poster replies. That's a really nice hope for someone else. Nice to hear that. You should pursue finding him. Chances are, he feels the same. Me too. I moved around a lot and it was hard for me to make any friends. She was the very first real friend that I had. It only lasted about a year or two before I switched schools again. I was really upset about losing my best friend and even tried to keep in contact with her, but she didn't have a phone back then and it wasn't really reciprocated, so I guess I stopped trying. I made a lot of questionable choices in my later teen years and early 20s, before I was capable of using solid judgment. I wonder about the people I unintentionally hurt, and I wonder if I should apologize a decade later. I wonder what they would feel or think if I crossed their minds. I wonder if they've forgiven me and considered giving me the benefit of the doubt, or if they'll always remember me as the one who did X to them or didn't do Y. I feel a lot of regret and it still brings me a lot of shame, and I let it hold me back a lot. I got sober almost 3 years ago, and during that time I've reached out to make amends to people. Most people just laugh it off like, wow, I didn't even remember that moment that's haunted you for years. It's uncomfortable but surprisingly gratifying at the same time. Some were harder than others, whereas I listened to the hurt some have carried over the years because of my actions. It still gives me comfort in knowing that my side is clean now and I don't repeat those behaviors. Forgiveness made a lot more sense to me as I did this. Most people just laugh it off like, wow, I didn't even remember that moment that's haunted you for years. This is what I was going to say. Most people are so busy being overwhelmed by his or her own wrongdoings they aren't aware how big others' mistakes are. And original poster wrote, teens and 20s, you're supposed to make mistakes then. But apologies always feel as if a boulder has been lifted. Either that or they are slowly plotting their revenge. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.